Breakfast with Bob.
Hey everybody, Bob Babbitt from Breakfast with Bob. We're brought to you by the PTO, Pro Triathletes Organization, by Amp Human, VeloFix, Normatec, Form Goggles, UCAN, and our Challenged Athletes Foundation. We recently had the opportunity to talk to three-time ITU world champion, Mr. Spencer Smith. Spencer, how the heck are you doing, bud?
I am fantastic. I like when you said three. I mean, one of them was a junior, so we'll call it three. Two of them were met. I was three. Three world titles.
Well, you won. Let's see, Junior Worlds '92, right?
Yeah.
That was your third time there. You get there, and then '93 and '94.
Yeah,
were your two back to back.
It was tough to win that junior. The junior one took longer than the senior one, which was bizarre, but that's just the way it was, And and then so I guess you can call it three,
So when did you get into the crazy? Because you were a swimmer, right? When did you find triathlon?
Yeah, I was a swimmer. I swam from when I was 4 or 5, and then I got into until I was 14, 15, just swimming, purely swimming. A national level. Got third in my age group in the 400, 1500, 200 meters, but more longer distance. 400 was my preferred distance. I did the 15, but it was a bit of a slog.
Were you thinking Olympics at that point?
Yeah, you know what I wanted to do, Bob? I wanted to go to one of those, the US. I wanted to go to the States. I wanted to go to, because one of my friends who I swam with in the club I was with, a couple went to, one went to, I think he went to Atlanta or Georgia, one of those ones. And then I thought, wow, that'd be amazing to go and
swim collegiately.
Yeah. But, unfortunately, I had a girlfriend and then she broke up with me. It was a disaster. And then I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's all drama. So then I just I threw the towel in. It was pathetic. And then I did rugby for a year. I said, well, screw it. I'm just going to go and do rugby, whatever. I can't do the swimming anymore. I'm done with that. And then my buddy said to me, well, why don't you just go and do this triathlon business? I was like, well, what is it? I don't even know what it is. He said, well, blah, blah. He explained what it was. I said, well, I'll have a go. I've got a good engine. I've been swimming from obviously a long time, from 5 till 15. And, the biking, we'll see how that goes. Running at school, cross country, nothing crazy. But the engine was good. The engine was good and the structure was good. And then it just took off from there.
So I remember a story, because your dad was one of the classic figures in our sport, Bill Smith, such a special guy. And I remember
he was a little
crazy, but crazy in a great way. So I remember that when you got into triathlon, you got into a lot of, when you think about Ironman, you saw it on television and you saw the beautiful palm trees, and it was sunny and all that. And I remember a race that you went to with your dad, and you woke up in the morning, and take it from there. It was like piss and rain.
Exactly. I mean, so you got to remember, right? There wasn't a ton of triathlon. Well, there wasn't a ton of much on, but we had we had Sky, which was we had Eurosport, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Eurosport, they did cover some triathlon. So you'll see Mark Allen in Hawaii, Bermuda. I'm like, let's get a load of this, Dad. So we decided, let's have a try. So anyway, I just thought, well, look at all these places. So what I decided, let's do a triathlon. Let's do some triathlon. It was actually at the Nationals, actually. So it wasn't a small event. And it was in the north of England, which generally doesn't have a lot of palm trees or sun at the best of times. and so I wake up, it's absolutely lashing it down, pissing with rain. I'm like, I'm not doing this. He goes, what do you mean you're not doing it? I said, look at that weather. And then I just keep reminding myself, I'm looking at the TV. I don't remember Mark Allen doing this. He wouldn't be out here in the middle of frigging some pond in the north of England doing. He goes, well, don't do it then. So then we're out in an argument. He throws the bike in the back, and I'm like, well, come on. And then so we're driving back down to London, and then no one's speaking, of course, because he's pissed that I'm not doing it, because I'm like, and I'm angry because I didn't want to do it. But then I was like, you know what? Just do it. Let's turn around. Let's do it. He goes, well, you don't have to do it if you don't want it. I said, listen, let's just do it. Let's let's just get on with it. So anyway, I did it, and actually I had a good race. I actually won it, but
You won the race.
Yeah, I won the race. It probably is not the best way to start any kind of a big race, but it was so bad, the weather. It was in Wakefield, actually. It was absolutely disastrous. But I guess, it taught me that, all races aren't like what Mark Allen did in Hawaii and Bermuda. It was that was triathlon English style. So it was an early morning wake up call, that's for sure. But it wasn't what I imagined it would be to start with, right? It didn't look. That's not what I bought into. That's not the deal, right? I wanted the suntan. I wanted it all. I wanted it. Yeah.
So during this era, the Olympics become a reality, right? 2000, the first Olympic triathlon. Was that a goal once you found out that was going to be happening?
You know what? Here's the thing, Bobby. I won my world titles quite early.
Yeah, 93, 94, yeah.
No, and so I was young. I was 20, 21. And I think what kind of put me on the road to wanting to do longer distance stuff was the fact that I did see Mark Allen, and he was my idol, right?
Right.
He was my idol, watching Mark Allen, Dave Scott, 89, watching it at home, watching all, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was and I don't care what you say. You know what made that race is because they didn't like each other. There wasn't like hugs and kisses and, oh, you're awesome and all this rubbish. They really didn't like each other. And I kind of dig that, So, and there was that rivalry. And I know you said a lot of times that they would have their photo shoot, but said, well, I'm not going to go there and do the photo shoot. Well, I'm not going to go there. So they had to you had to put them together because no one would go, no one would give an inch because they were in preparation, which is, obviously I kind of like that. So anyway, so I saw that race and that's the thing that really, of course I had to do the short distance stuff because I was young, but that's the thing that I always really wanted to do. But I think in hindsight, I think that was probably the thing that probably screwed up my Olympic aspirations because I just went to Hawaii or longer distance stuff too early. And once you've dipped your toe into the longer stuff, I don't care who you are. It's very difficult then to go back and start doing short distance racing.
You can't go. Yeah, you can't go long back to short. Once you're there, it's over.
It's very. I mean, I know Gomez is doing it, and Alistair may do it. I don't know. It's a tough transition. Once you've gone that kind of a route to go to long distance, it's a difficult transition to have that top end speed that them boys have got, especially now in the short distance racing. So I think when I did go back to the short distance racing for a little bit, I just got my ass kicked, to be honest with you. And I never felt quite the same again. I lost all that speed. I lost the speed that I had when I was just doing that raw power, that raw speed, And,
oh, you mean like this?
Yeah.
When you were raw guy, right?
I was hungry. I was crazy. I just had that raw kind of power that I think kind of disappeared when I started to be a little bit more. When you do the longer stuff, you have to be a little bit more patient, and it's a different. It's what it is. It's a different race. You can't compare races.
So when you were doing this, I think the St. George series and some of those really, swim, bike, run, that
Very
was your
tough.
Wheelhouse, right? Because it's high intensity and you're just going full out.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, but the problem with the races were they were in January, February. They were in Australia most of the time when I raced them. And I was tired a little bit. I was a little bit overweight to start. I was a little bit heavy. You have Christmas and, you've had a long season and then you want a little bit of a break. And then so you don't, it was always tough to be completely on form in the first few races because there's no time for that, because if you're not completely on straight away, you're off the back. Because there's no time to get into it because it was so fast, so dynamic, so explosive. And as the months or as the weeks went on when I lived in Australia for those amount of time, I found my feet. But it was very, very difficult to race the Australians and all those guys, because they were you know, for them racing in January, February and March was a normal deal. But coming from where we are, you know, we close it down in October, September, right. October, we're done. We're chilling out. We're you know, we're having good Christmas time. So it was a difficult time, and that racing was very, very hard on the body. But I came back from it in April. So let's say, you know, when St. Anthony's was a huge race,
right?
And I was absolutely flying. I had such form then because I didn't have to get race fitness because I was already so fast from doing that short, explosive stuff. So it really did help. But in hindsight, it was a very, very hard few months when you're in Australia. The heat, of course, there was a good, but it was very, very good. So I did get my ass kicked quite regularly, but I did win the occasional one, like that last one. So I enjoyed that racing though. It was a lot of fun.
Speaking of a lot of fun, and you mentioned rivalries, you and Simon Lessing, right?
Sure.
Both UK athletes. You want to be the best. You want to be the best Brit. And for you, how important was it to when you went against Simon to beat him?
Everything. I mean, you know, there was no one else. Everyone else could beat me, but it couldn't be Simon. That's the, you know, and you know, that was the thing. And my dad used that, you know, he's like, well, you know, if he saw that I was not slacking, but if he saw that the motivation wasn't there, and I said, and there were maybe he made a contract in May for a race in France. I said, well, I don't know, I'm not really up for it. I don't know, you know, complaining, moaning, whatever. He goes, well, yeah, it's up to you, son. But I think Simon might turn up to that one. Boom, straight. You know, that got me out of bed very, very sharpish, very, very quickly.
What was your best race against him?
The ones I beat him.
How many times do you think you raced him?
A lot. He beat me more often than not. The thing about him was I had to get rid of him on the bike. If I got off the bike with him, I'm like, oh, it's a disaster. It's gonna be. I try to go fast at the start, slow at the start. You had to be very, very explosive from the swim and the bike and transition. And I had to get rid of him. And that's, you know, obviously when I did win against him, I never got off the bike with him. I couldn't get off the bike with him. And I wasn't a bad runner. Of course, I was a good runner, but he was a better runner. I think he was a better runner. But it was funny that, you know, obviously he went to Hawaii and he never did what I did. But, you know, it was a strange, but I don't, when I raced him in the short distance stuff, it was a game. It was full on. It was game on. And I think the world, I think the triathlon world knew that, and it was exciting. And I obviously, anyone else could beat me but Simon, but he beat me enough, that's for sure. But he got me out of bed. But he got me out of bed in the morning. He definitely got me out of bed in the morning. That's for sure. And I think you need that. You need that kind of rivalry. You need that kind of you need that kind of like, if I'm not doing it, he's doing it. So I'm going to do it. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. It kind of kept you on your toes. It kept you lively, you know.
When you look at the moving to the longer distance, was that Muncie race in '96? Was that the first one, the first sort of longer distance ITU long distance worlds?
Yeah, it was, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was like a deer in the headlights. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, so I got out of the water, the usual, and then it was just Luke and I'd raced Luke a lot because he was on the same team as I was in Belgium, so I'd raced him a lot during many years. But so it's Luke and I head to head on the bike. But, you know, 25 miles isn't 56 miles.
Right.
So, you know, you get to the end of 25 miles and I'm like, God, I'm not even close to like finishing this race. You know what I'm saying? And this is like, it's only a half distance. And I'm like, this is tough. And I got off the bike and I felt like I've been worked over. I felt like I've been worked over, and it wasn't, the weather wasn't exceptionally warm, but it was humid, it was heavy. And so the run was kind of a rolling kind of a run. But it was a difficult race because I really didn't have any idea of what I was doing. You can have plans and you can have all these things going through your head of how you're going to attack it and what you're going to do, but ultimately the body will decide what you can and can't do. But when I raced Luke to head, and this was obviously his big year when he went to smash Hawaii, he was on the upward trajectory. Yeah. I mean, he was finding some real serious form, right? And this was in July-ish, September-ish.
Something like that. Yeah.
But he was coming into some really, really top form. So I guess in hindsight, when you look back now and you think, well, third wasn't horrible, but
Welchie won it, right? Welchie won it, and then Luke was second, and you were third. That was a hell of a race.
He skipped past me. Greg would look like, you know, when Greg was on, and he was skipped past me on the run. And there was no way I could have gone with that. I was with Luke for a few miles, I think maybe 4 or 5 miles. And then he kind of pulled away, and then Greg went past us both. But it was I was like, I don't know about this long distance stuff like that. But I was so stubborn. That I wanted to have to do long distance. I was so like, in my mind, like about Mark Allen and Dave Scott, and I have to do long distance. I'm living in San Diego then, so I'm like,
yes,
holy shit. So I'm in San Diego. I'm in like the hub of all this stuff where I've always wanted to be. Now there are palm trees. I'm not in the north of England anymore. So so ultimately I'm thinking, so I've got to do this longer stuff, but that first race was a tough race. Oh, it was. I finished that, and my dad was like, "Well, what do you think about it?" I said, "That was a hard race. That was hard." I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I was stubborn, like I said, but he's like, "Well, we can always go back to the 2-hour races, and you can earn a lot better money." I said, "Well, that's not a bad idea," but it was tough. It was a hard race. Ooh.
So in 98, you get 5th there. Do you look at that as one of your best races?
Yeah, look, I always think, and I think you said it once, and I didn't want to agree with you, and I don't know if you said it to me or I just read it, but you said it. You said, after my dad passed in 98, you said, and I think it's taken a while for me to come to this point. When he passed away, or when he was there, when he was with me in all the races, there was no one more than I would want to finish with to see him at the finish line. I didn't really care about, I love winning, but I just really loved to see his face. He was so excited and so proud of me to do these races and to win races and so forth. So when that was taken away from me, I felt that kind of a part of me had died a little bit. Because, and that's always a bad thing when you're doing it for somebody else. You really should sometimes just do it for yourself. And so I felt that when I was racing, 99% of the time, I was doing it for my dad or my mom. You know what I'm saying? I was doing it because, and I think that goes back from when I was a young kid. When I was at school, I wanted to impress them. I wanted to show them that I was working hard. And so when my dad was always there at the finish line, and he was no longer there, it was a very, very hard transition for me. And I think I never really recovered from the fact that he wasn't there. He was obviously my biggest supporter and my biggest ally. And to not have him there was kind of like, well, even if I won, I was like, I like kind of, it didn't really have that same kind of didn't have that same feeling. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's how I felt.
Well, he was sort of the rudder, right? He was sort of the guy who was always there, making sure your bike was tuned up, making sure you don't have to think about it. When you have somebody in your life that you don't have to think about that part and you can just do your training and then they're gone, that's hard.
I was very, very lucky all through my career, even from a swimmer. My parents were very, very supportive, but they never forced me. They never said to me, "You've got to do this." Or so when I first started swimming, I actually did judo for a little bit. And I did judo for like, I don't know, you know, when you're young, you know, you just try all these things. And my mum bought me all this kit, and she bought me all the stuff. And after about 6-8 weeks, I said, Mum, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell me? I said, well, you just bought all the stuff, and I felt really bad, and I felt I'm letting you down. And she goes, okay, well, that's fine. You don't have to do it anymore, but why don't you want to do it anymore? I said, I just don't want the smelly feet in my face anymore. I can't stand the smelly feet in my face. I can't do this anymore. So she was like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, I said, I don't know. I just felt bad. So they never forced me to do anything. I just did stuff that I love to do, I was passionate about, and they just let it develop. And I was always very motivated. But I think the motivation come from the fact that I got excited when I wanted them to feel proud of me. And I like that. I like that feeling. And my mum obviously still very proud of me, but you know, she wasn't at the races. So, you know, my dad was. So my dad was always, but she was always the first person we would call after any big race. She was at Hawaii when I came fifth. So that was beautiful, right? My dad never saw me race Hawaii. So when, you know, my dad passed very early. I mean, you know, 52 was a very, very young age to pass. So my mum's, touch wood, is healthy. She's fantastic. And, you know, she lives with me, and you know, we have a very, very strong relationship as always. But I always felt very fortunate that they were so supportive, but not gushing. You know what I mean? They weren't living. It wasn't too much.
No, they weren't living through you.
Yeah.
Was it hot? I mean, after Dad passed in '99 and 2000, you ended up going to pro cycling. Was that?
Yeah.
You think that maybe was? Listen, I sort of need something different.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, when I was home, when I was younger, you know, watching Mark Allen, I used to love the pro bike riding. You know, I used to love watching Paris-Roubaix and Sean Kelly and, you know, all them guys. And Le Mans was my first time. Le Mans, when he won against Fignon in 89. I remember that day like it was yesterday, because I got given a bike that day, and I went 10 miles down the road and I thought I'd done the Tour de France. I literally thought I'd done the Tour de France because I was so excited that I'd ridden. But now, you know, and I got the clipless pedals, the Stephen Roach clipless pedals. I had the red and white look pedals, you know what I'm saying? And so that set me off. And it was, you know, I did want to. And then the opportunity arose that I could go and do this pro cycling on the team with Linda McCartney, you know, Paul McCartney's wife, who had a vegetarian kind of food line. And of course, I just took that moment and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. In hindsight, it was a tough era because obviously we all know what was going on in that era.
Right.
But I think I was kind of naive in a little bit. I thought, well, I'm a good rider in the sense of triathlon. I'm strong. But when you went to race in Europe on the bike, they were all good. And then they were all good. And when they add that little bit of extra sauce that they were doing, you know, the chemicals, and you're 40th in line down, and you're doing 40 miles an hour, and you're like, who is driving this? I mean, you have how can anyone be going far? I mean, I was like literally 40th in line, and we were just getting faster and faster and faster. It was a very, very big wake up call for me, and but it was a dream I always wanted to do. So I took the chance with both hands. It was I don't think I would change it, but it was disappointing. It was disappointing because I felt I failed in the respect that I didn't obviously get anywhere close to what I did in triathlon, and it was a very short-lived thing because I felt unless you're gonna, you know, start with you know, on the program, as it were, you know, not training program. I'm talking all sorts of programs. You understand what I'm saying?
All the rest of it, absolutely.
The whole thing. I'm just going to get my ass kicked all the time. And I'm like, you know, I don't, that's not quite the case in triathlon. So then I decided to bounce back to triathlon.
And you won Ironman Florida.
Yeah, exactly. And that was fun. Obviously, it was a big win for me because I don't know, why did I do Ironman Florida? I think I don't know if I had a bad race or something happened in Hawaii, and don't know what happened. I can't remember. I'm not very good at remembering what happened, but I just remember that I went to Florida, and that was my first. I was off the front all day, and it was a fantastic day. I won. Yeah, can't you can't complain with that. But Ironman is a funny. Is so funny. You know, my dad never wanted me to do Ironman. He always used to say to me, "Well, why do you want to do something in 9 hours, 8 hours when you can get paid in 2 hours?" He's like, "Why? What?"
Yeah.
He was always looking at me. He's like, "Well, how many of these can you do a year?" I said, "I don't know, 2, 3." He's like, "Well, you can do 10 of these other ones, 10 of these short distance races."
Yeah.
He was like, you know what it was? He saw how hard that race was, or how hard Ironman racing is. And yeah, short distance racing is hard, but it's done in an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and 50 minutes. And it's done. You can have breakfast. You're done. You're finished. You know, and you get a and you get a paycheck. Where the Ironman was so obviously long, and it was just a different mindset that I don't think he really ever grasped. That he really didn't have the passion for that I loved. You know, he didn't really go for it in that sense. So maybe it was good that he never saw me struggling in a lot of Ironman, because he was like, come on. He did say to me once, before he saw me in Hawaii, he said, "If I see you struggling ridiculously, I'm pulling you off. I'm literally pulling you off the course, because this is ridiculous. I'm not having you out there smashing your head against the wall, trying to do this. It's no need. You don't have to do this." So he said he's going to pull me off the course, but he obviously didn't get to see me do any Ironman, which was a blessing, maybe.
So in, I think it was 2005, you get hit by a car, and you're trapped under the car, burn, 3rd-degree burns. You broke your scapula, clavicle, 6 ribs. I mean, at that point, did you think, you know what, my career, because you'd been in it for a while. You won Junior Worlds back in 92. So here's 13 years later, you're probably thinking, maybe my career's over.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think, like I said, when you win a lot young, it's always difficult to, to keep that hunger, to keep that desire, to keep that, that kind of, that fire burning. Ironman would do it in a sense, but obviously getting hit by the car, that was, I'd never been hit by a car before. So, it was a bad one. It wasn't good. I was under the car, without going into too much detail.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I had degree burns, and I broke the clavicle, scapula. I broke all of that. I think what happened was it just adds to that kind of, it compounds. You've been doing it a long time. You're mentally getting a little bit tired. You're worried about what's happening behind you instead of what's in front of you. And when you're young, you just want to attack everything. You just get out. You just want to attack, and you're not worried who's behind you, because why would I care who's behind me? I only care who's going to in front of me. If anyone's going to be in front of me, and no one's going to beat me, And I had some, when I look back, I said some horrible, some arrogant things like, "Well, I wouldn't want to race me," that kind of stuff. It was ridiculous, and it was kind of embarrassing now. But I think that as you get older, you kind of mellow out a little bit. I did. And I think as I went into the longer stuff, it mellowed me out in not such a good way. I think that was, when I was young, I was arrogant. I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that kind of fire in the belly. And I think as I went longer, it didn't go out, but I just think it died a little bit.
Because you had to be patient. There's different, where when you're racing shorter stuff, it's aggressive. It's let's go. Where you have to be patient, and you got your, okay, am I drinking enough? Am I eating enough? There's a lot of thinking going on during those longer distances. And especially with Kona, you've still got the greatest athletes on the planet there. It's not like there's 1 or 2 guys. You're dealing with 25, 30 guys who all are capable of winning that race.
Of course, and that was the thing, is I take nothing away from long distance athletes, but I think when you can go fast and short, there's a certain, not many. I think to do that, it requires a certain person, a certain,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have that kind of ability.
Right.
And to go longer and slower requires another certain ability, you know. So I think I was more that person that would enjoy the short, fast, explosive stuff. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy the long stuff. I just think that I was probably, my mentality
Yep.
was more set for that kind of like, when that gun goes, it's 2 hours or however long it was. And unfortunately didn't have a lot of they didn't have a lot of 70.3s then.
No, that was really a good distance for you. It's too
And
bad they
that
didn't
would
have
have
that.
been,
Yeah.
and that would have been a good distance for me because, you know, I would have been done in 4 hours or 3 hours and 50, and then I would have, it wouldn't have taken too much out of me. But Ironman is like I always say to the athletes I coach, it's a different it's a different game. It's a different race altogether. You can't even compare the two. It's not even the same sport. So when people win, like for Dino, you know, when he wins the Olympics and he goes to Hawaii, that's a special athlete.
Right.
That's a very, 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 very special athlete, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Okay. A little rapid fire, some quickie questions. Toughest moment in your career?
My father passing.
Yeah. Happiest memory?
World Championships in Muskoka, 1992. My first ever world title of any sort. Because it
That
took
was
a long
junior.
time to get. Junior, yeah.
Muskoka. 3 years to get there.
It took a long time. I don't know. I always thought I was going to win it straight off, and it didn't happen. So to win it finally was a big thing for me.
Hardest training session?
The Germans, probably your Lake Henshaw ride every Wednesday at 7:30 at the Pancake House. It was without fail, you know, leading up to Hawaii. It was hard. It was really hard. It was ridiculously hard, especially when Norman, because it started off somewhat hard. And then as we got closer and closer and closer, because they would get there probably 8 weeks before Hawaii. So the first, you know, week wasn't that bad. But as the weeks progressed, as we got closer to Hawaii, everyone was obviously getting fitter and fitter, and it just got faster and faster and faster. And I remember Paul Huddle saying, "Don't get involved with it. Don't get involved with it. Don't. This is only training. Only training. Remember this." But it was even if you didn't get involved with it, even just to hang on the back was hard. It was really hard.
So Spencer, what made you a champion?
I love what I did. I had a lot of passion for the sport. I enjoyed it. It didn't seem to me that I was working, and obviously I was working hard in the sense of training hard, but it didn't feel like a chore. It didn't ever feel like I was like, oh God, I've got to go. I mean, some days you're not in the mood. That's everyone, you know, everyone has that. But in general, I love what I did. And I always knew how fortunate I was that I could do something that I would wake up every day. I'm going to the pool. I'm going to go and ride my bike. I'm going to run. I'm going to the gym. I mean, that's not a job. That's not really a job. That's just like a passion. And I was so very, very fortunate that I could do that. And it, you know, obviously it gave me took me around the world as well. It showed me a lot. It was a great teaching tool as well. Very, very fortunate.
What made Bill Smith special?
His passion as well. He was so passionate. He I mean, I think sometimes he was over passionate, but he was so into it in the sense of, and he was so on my side. You know, obviously he was my father, but it really, you know, it didn't matter because he was always there, fighting for me, you know. And I was very, very lucky to have, like I said, not just my dad, but my mum, to have such great parents. It meant the world to me. I was very lucky boy.
What are your thoughts when you got inducted into the ITU Hall of Fame?
You know, obviously the ITU, I'm so happy now because, you know, there was a time where ITU and Ironman weren't talking that much. And I just said,
Right.
well, we've all got to get along. You know, if we want this sport to become better, and you know, in all honesty, I would love to see the Ironman be in the Olympics. That's, to me, would be because it's like saying we're only going to have a 100-meter race. Well,
Right.
it's like,
Where's the marathon? Yeah.
where it doesn't make sense. You know, we have different athletes. It's like you can't compare, you know, Mo Farah with, you know, Usain Bolt, for example, or Kipchoge with someone else. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, it was lovely to see that the sport had somewhat healed itself in a sense, and they were kissing and making up. So I love that. But you know, it would be lovely to see the longer distance. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I keep going shorter and shorter, but I would like to go the other way where we get longer. I think people would be into that because it is about so much. You know, you're doing that. You know, people can relate to the Ironman or relate to the marathon, but then you add 112. I don't think it's been exploited enough in that sense for the average Joe. I mean, you know, we know it because we're in it. But I think for the average person, wait, you're going to go and do the map? They can't comprehend it. So I think that would be a fantastic addition. I don't know if it'd ever be possible. I don't understand why it's not. It blows my mind why it's not in the Olympics. That distance, the Ironman distance.
Spencer, thank you, bud, for taking so much time and chatting. It's so cool to catch up with you. It's been far too long. What are you up to? I know you're coaching and living with mom. So what else you up to?
Well, my mom lives with me. I don't, because that's animal. But you know, so I'm coaching, and so you know, I'm still training. I'm still enjoying what I do. I still get out there. Obviously, with the lockdown and stuff, it's been a bit strange. But once again, I think it's the sport or sport in general has given me you know, I think people when they don't have that structure. I've had that structure to go out and exercise every day and do stuff that maybe it comes second nature to us because we know structure, we know how to get out there. And for these other people that don't really have that, and I'm just saying that it's fantastic to see here in England, the amount of people riding. Yes. Because they couldn't drive their cars, right? Because they weren't allowed. So the amount of traffic, bicycle, it's absolutely fantastic to see. And so in that sense, let's try to make something positive out of this situation. It's great to see, and I've seen the amount of actually women group rides happening. It's fantastic to see. It really is. And I don't know why it hasn't happened before, because I don't know why women, but it's fantastic. You know, you'll see one man and a woman together, but now you see big group rides of women riding together, and it's really fantastic to see. I love to see that. And it's, but so I'm doing my stuff. I'm just training and not in terms of racing, but just to keep saying upstairs. You need it. I need it. I think it's a you know, it's a release for me.
Love it. 3-time world champion, Mr. Spencer Smith, has been our guest. Spencer, you are a legend, brother. Thanks so much for taking time.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks. It's been a long time.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. See ya.